Now, here is a fascinating story coming up because we're going to introduce you to an adventurer who rode, that is right.
Through our worst nightmares.
But that could be ride. It could be ride all the way to Antarctica. Here he is. He's Jamie Douglas Hamilton, and he did this to honour a man called Harry McNeish. Now, tell us about Harry McNeish. Who was he?
So Harry McNeish was the forgotten hero from the Shackleton expedition. He was the one who fixed the boat, made it seaworthy from Elephant Island, and it got them to South Georgia. And he was denied the polar medal by Shackleton. At every stage of a journey, he saved those men. But for over 100...
You say he was denied it by Shackleton?
He was denied the polar medal.
Why?
Because he fell out with him. He had a conflict with him on the ice. Oh. Shackleton was telling him to drag these heavy lifeboats across the ice. They're going holes and holes in lifeboats, running on pack ice. And he told them not to do it. He knew his skills as a master carpenter, and if they carried on, those would have been irreparably damaged. And he saved them all by standing up to him, but he betrayed him as a mutineer. Shackleton threatened to shoot him, pulled out a gun at him. Oh. And he then, after that, came back to Port Glasgow and moved over to New Zealand. And it was a great shame. He died completely destitute. His frostbite in his hand was so bad, he couldn't do any work, carpentry. And he died destitute under a tarpaulin.
Wow, so you basically did this in tribute to him, and I know you went to visit his great-nephew, his surviving relatives, to tell them about what you've achieved. And during this row, you broke 8 world records, you nearly capsized 50 times, you lost a crew member due to frostbite and hypothermia. This was an incredible feat.
It was very tough, and I've done 3 rows before, but this is by far, even though it's shortest, it was by far the toughest. The cold it was really hard. You just can't get into a routine when you're in the cold.
And rowing for 90 minutes at a time, and then presumably sleeping for the other 90 minutes when you were having a rest, but in these freezing conditions. I mean, how exhausted, how do you mentally continue that sort of challenge in those kinds of conditions?
It's 90% mental. You have to get fit for it, but it is 90% mental when you're out there. But you can't really adjust to the cold when you're out there. Even when you drink the water, it makes you even colder. And my leg was vibrating so much, it's almost like shell shock. Then it goes into your torso. And then when you're out on your shift, you know, the temperature's 1 degree on average, but the wind chill was about -15.
Well, you see, you're either very brave or very mad. I'm not exactly sure. Because, Jamie, we have to put this in context as well. You're doing this for the British Heart Foundation as well as Harry McNeish. And tell us about your own heart diagnosis.
Yes, I've always been active the whole way through my life. But I could feel when I was doing training, I just wasn't as fit as I used to be, and I'd get fatigued afterwards. And it's when I had COVID very badly that I had to go and see someone, because I couldn't even run for more than 3 minutes. I struggled to even walk upstairs. And surprisingly, they referred me to a cardiologist. They told me I had a leaking aortic valve. I was born with a bicuspid valve, and it means 2 valves going into the heart, aorta of the heart, and it was leaking so badly that I had about 6 months left. So I had immediate open heart surgery. It took me a while to understand that I had this condition.
You were 6 months from death.
6 months from death.
Gosh, and then you had open heart surgery, and 5 months later you were doing this.
5 months later doing this, just under 5 months. And it was 3 months. You have to take it easy. You have to, because your sternum's separated. And for the first 2 weeks, you can't, so much brain power is going into healing. You can't even read more than 2 pages.
Well, I would love to say your family must have been incredibly worried about you, but you're from a family of these sorts of people. Your father, the first to fly over Everest.
So, yeah, Grandad was the first man to fly over Mount Everest.
Oh, sorry, grandfather.
In 1933. And everyone said it's impossible. No one could actually fly a plane that high. And he put an extra big propeller on, and he flew over Mount Everest. And because of that flight, 20 years later, Hillary used the footage from that flight to then navigate a new route, which now is known as Hillary Step on Everest.
Wow. Incredible.
Tell me this, do the blisters on your hands when you row, do they heal?
Well, it's frost nip that I had this time,
Listen,
which
have
is
you got
really
any
bad.
scars
When I go like that, I can't feel the sensation in my fingers.
Really?
And I can't wiggle my toes even now.
Oh.
And the feeling of, because they were numb for so long, so little blood goes into them. When the blood comes back in, it is the sorest feeling I think I've ever had.
There is nothing about what you've done or described that would entice me in any way. However, in my time, I've seen an iceberg, and I noticed when we were showing the icebergs there that you were passing by, they are this most amazing blue colour. It's just a colour that I've never seen in everyday life. It's amazing. But you also, there were a lot of sights. Penguins featured.
Absolutely. So we had, it's stunning when you're there. It's type 2 fun. So when you're doing it, you want it to end because it's so tough. But when you look back on it, the scale of Antarctica is huge. The whole scenery, the icebergs, the blues and the icebergs, they're enormous. You pass islands that look like the top of Himalayan peaks. Penguins would circle our boats, follow our boats like dolphins would.
Wow.
We had orcas, whales.
Wow.
There's one scene where whales kept on coming up for 20 minutes towards the end.
I have a feeling I know the answer to this question, but are you done now, or are you going to do something else after
I think that's it for now.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to say you can't wait for the next...
I said that after the last one, so who
OK,
knows?
we'll see more from you, I suspect. Jamie Douglas-Hamilton, fascinating to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for all of that. What fun.
Hello, Jamie Douglas-Hamilton. What do you do? I'm an adventurer. It's incredible, Jamie. Incredible. Thank goodness there are people like you. Thank you very much indeed.